Aho, Bujo and the Noimagnatok, Anin, Kaagegaabaw and Dishinakas, Mikanak and Dudem, Mikanak Wajawing and Dunjaba, Besho Kakabakang and Danongom, Apichigomi Gwech Pisandawe. And what I said there was a traditional Ojibwe protocol greeting. I said, hello, all of my relatives. My name is Kaagegaabaw. I'm Turtle Clan. I'm a descendant of Turtle Mountain. I live close to Minneapolis today and Toronto and Nongom. And today I am in Toronto. That's where I'm joining you from. I wanted to take a moment at the very beginning of this and say, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this conversation with James Kaagegaabaw. This is something I love doing on Friday afternoons. For the first several years, it had been Ojibwe Word of the Day on Thursday nights. Then there was Modern Questions, Ancient Wisdom on Instagram, where I discussed modern topics. And today I really wanted to have it more like a conversation, a talk about some of these words that are for me incredibly important. And the word I wanted to speak about today was Ogichidaa. It's Ogichidaa, Gijigat. It's Veterans Day. And I wanted to take a moment and go over what does that word mean in Ojibwe. It's an incredibly important spiritual, as well as it's spiritual in the way that when we use that word warrior, it may not mean the same thing as it does when we're discussing that in English. Ogichidaa or Ogichidaakwe. Ogichidaa, it can mean the male warrior. Ogichidaakwe is the female warrior. And this word can really mean a couple of things. Well, when we look at the Ogichidaa, historically speaking, Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, had this class, it's not a class, this group of people who they called warriors, and they were intrepid and they were fearless, and they defended us for literally thousands of years. They were front and center whenever we were in danger, or whenever we needed help, whenever we needed to be fed, or whenever we needed to be looked after. That was the Ogichidaa's role. And as we look at historically, these people have always been held in the highest of regard. The Ogichidaa, the warrior, has always been held in like the highest esteem. Veterans have always been regarded as people who have put the lives of others, have always put their lives in front of people. And as we're discussing this, I know there's some etymologies of the language that I'd love to share with you today. One etymology, it's the story of a word. It's where that word comes from. It's believed that it comes from the Dakota Ogichidaa, which sounds very similar to the Ojibwe Ogichidaa. That these words may have, that word may have been a borrowing into the Ojibwe language. So there's one etymology. Yet another one that I find absolutely fascinating. It has like a Proto-Algonquian history to it. That means before the Ojibwe language existed, there were people who were probably using a word similar to Ogichidaa. And it comes from this word, Kichitwa. Someone who is important, someone who is highly thought of. So the Ogichidaa has always been someone held in high regard. And this is someone who, as a warrior, again, would have been a fearless advocate of his or her people. And I say his or hers because you can also have Ogichidaakwe, the warrior woman, that totally works in the language. And there's a historical precedent for that as well. And things will change over the years. And there's one other word I want to speak about today too, because I hold this word in very high regard, and that's Jamaganish. Jamaganish is a person who has enlisted, usually in the United States military or even the Canadian military, and has worn a uniform. So that would be the word Jamaganish for soldier. And I like how the language makes a distinction between, soldier or uniformed soldier and warrior. As we will see that these roles might be a little different. So the Shamaganish is also very highly thought of. And that's a very dear word to me as well, because I have my late father. And I was given this gift of the poppy. This is a beaded poppy from a dear friend here in Canada. My father always wore one of these. He was a decorated combat veteran who served in Vietnam. Both of my brothers are veterans, uncles who are veterans, as well as cousins, a number of family members who have bravely served in the military, again, acting for the benefit of others, for people they may not even know, people who may not even like them. And yet there they were, advocating for them. So that's part of being the warrior. One other etymology I heard, and I find this one very beautiful. It's a folk etymology. It kind of gives you an insight into the thoughts of some fluent speakers. It was Ogichidaa. He or she has a great heart. That kind of heart that is unafraid to love, and again, unafraid to put his or her life on the line for someone they may not know. So when we look at this word, Ogichidaa, it has so many different, beautiful, descriptive meanings. And for so many people, this was the main goal in life. It was to become an Ogichidaa. It was to become brave. And if we're speaking about that grandfather teaching, that sacred law of bravery, then we're speaking about Zungadee. Zungadee, our sacred law, our grandfather teaching of courage, of bravery. And it literally means Zung, strong, and Dee is the heart. If you tell someone they are brave in Ojibwe, you are saying Gazungidee, you have a strong heart. And you need a strong heart if you are going to become an Ogichidaa. So we have this period in our history where the Ogichidaa is engaging in combat, is defending, is advocating for his or her people. And then there will be kind of a shift. Is no longer just fighting, but begins looking after his or her people. And we'll see this because that word can mean warrior. It can also mean like a ceremonial headman or ceremonial headwoman, someone who is looking after and caring for ceremonies, particularly like drum societies and other ceremonies as well. And when I thought of that word, strength of heart, and I thought of the Ogichidaa, when these people are in ceremony, the one we call warrior, and I think Ogichidaa is a much better word for that. They were able to practice these ceremonies, and while they were doing that, they were able to pray. They were able to pray for all of their relatives, all of them, in the east, Wabanong, Shawanong, the south, Ningabianong, the west, and Kiwaitanong, the north, praying for all of their relatives. And you need a very strong heart to do that. Because of course you're praying for your grandparents, you're praying for your nieces and nephews, your relatives, your aunts and uncles, your parents and your children. But you're also praying for people who may be doing bad things right now, who may be engaging in trafficking, in violence, in brutality. People who may not be acting in the best way for their relatives. And when the Ogichidaa is in ceremony, when the Ogichidaa is praying for them, this Ogichidaa or Ogichidaakwe, this man or warrior woman, is able to ask on the behalf of all of those relatives. Gidinawendaman, we're all related. The Ogichidaa acknowledges the truth that if I am all of my relatives and all of my relatives are me, I am going to ask for my relatives the same thing I would ask for myself. And in that, it's ambiguous to go, I'm praying that you all have peace and well-being. I'm praying that you all have good physical health. Your bodies have good physical health. I am praying that you all have your thoughts and your emotions in balance so that you may know true joy. And I am praying that you all walk along the path of life in a good way. Knowing that even if someone who is acting in a way that wasn't positively beneficial for their relatives, for their society, knowing that if they had peace and balance, if they had good health, if they had joy, their thoughts and emotions were in balance, and they walked along the path of life in a good way, then they would not do the things that they are doing. And we know we can't make people change, but we can at least ask and we can at least advocate for them. And the Ogichidaa, showing great strength of heart, showing great hearts, that's what they do. And it could be either in the field of battle, but it can also be in ceremony. And the Ogichidaa goes where he or she is needed. And it's the same thing I heard from a woman who was a jingle dress dancer. And while she was dancing, she told me her elders had called her an Ogichidaakwe and didn't know why. And it was because while she was dancing, while everyone could hear the jingle, she was dancing for the healing, the entire nation. She was dancing for the healing of everyone at the Nima Iding, where they dance with one another at the powwow. And so for me, it shows me that what a great aspiration to have, to be an Ogichidaa, to be someone who leads a life with Debwewan, with truth, speaking from the heart, that very center and core of their being, to have that ambition to Kwakwadizi, to be honest, to be virtuous, to be righteous, to lead a life where your words are in alignment with your actions. I won't just tell people I am an Ogichidaa, I will show them with the very way I live my life that I am. With Dabasendizoin, with humility, to not strive to be more important than the people you're defending, to not be more important than the peoples whose lives you're advocating for. To say I am all of these people. In that I will give them the very best that I have, the very best of me, with Menajiadu and with respect, acknowledging the sanctity, the sacredness of your relatives' lives. And then, of course, with Saki Itduan. And I've seen that time and time again, that kind of love, that unconditional, compassionate love for your relatives, even in the most stressful times, I would see people do just the most heroic, amazing things. Not because it was for themselves, but out of that unconditional love, it was for someone that they loved. It was for someone they may not even know, but were still able to love. And in that moment, they were able to do amazing, extraordinary, heroic things. With Zungide Ewan, with the strength of heart, that kind of love will give you strength of heart. It will give you bravery. It will give you courage. It will give you the ability to make those difficult decisions when you absolutely need to. And when you're acting that way, the Ogichidaa is acting in a way that is positively beneficial, with wisdom, with intelligence, with enlightenment in a way that's positively beneficial, not just for them and their relatives now, but for someone coming 7 generations from now. So in that word, Ogichidaa, earlier I presented that it could be from this verb, Ogichidaa, which means to be important, to be highly thought of. And there was, when a new culture arrived here with its own spiritual traditions, here on Mikanako-Minising, here on Turtle Island, in their tradition, they had a word for saint. And when they were looking to translate this into Ojibwe, the people recognized the stories of the saints that the people who ultimately colonize and settle Mikanako-Minising, Turtle Island were telling. And when they heard the stories of the saints, they were like, oh, we have a word for that, Ogichidaa. And I believe that Ogichidaa has the same origin as Ogichidaa, a great being. And so when they said it, how would you say that word for a saint? It was Ogichidaa. He or she acts in a great way. He or she acts in a way that's positively beneficial for all of their relatives. And for me, I think that's remarkable, because when we're speaking about veterans, when we're speaking about warriors, we're speaking about someone who is acting for the benefit of all of their relatives without holding on at all to the outcome of things. They're knowing that if I act in a positively beneficial way right now, if I act along the lines of those sacred grandfather teachings, if I lead the good life, Minopamatsuan, life of peace and balance, then I will be able to act in a way that's positively beneficial for all of my relatives. I may not know the outcome. I've let go of that, but I'll act in a good way now. So on that note, I want to take a moment and say, Apachigo Miigwech. Thank you so much to the Ogichidaa, to the warriors, and Ogichidaakwe, the warrior women who have tirelessly, who have, with great strength of heart, acted for the benefit of all of us. And the words themselves don't express the feeling, but to say that moment, Apachigo Miigwech, thank you all so much. And I want to take a moment and say, Apachigo Miigwech, Bizendawi. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening this afternoon. I am delighted that you've taken a few moments out of your day to talk about, to discuss, to listen to some insights, not just about the language, but how we lead our lives. And that you're joining me here from Toronto and Shaganashiwaking in Canada. This has been absolutely fantastic. And I want to say, Apachigo Miigwech, Bizendawi. Thank you all so much for listening. And maybe I can take a few moments if you guys have questions. I'd be delighted to talk with you all about that. Again, I'm set up here in my hotel room, and it's so cool to see all. Oh, Miigwech to all of you who are watching on YouTube and Facebook and on Instagram as well. We're broadcasting to all 3 of these spots. Oh, Miigwech to you all. Well, I wanted to take a moment and again say, Apachigo Miigwech, Bizendawi. Thank you all so much for listening this afternoon. Again, please keep in touch with me. You can keep in touch with me on my website as well as my social media here. You can sign up for the email list, and I'll tell you the places I'm about to speak at. I'm traveling next week. I'm excited about that. And I want to take this moment and say, again, thank you so much for listening. And Bandama Minawoda Sabandamang Gigawabandaman in the spiritual decide. We see each other again. Oh, thank you.